This is the Alden Report.
Hey, it's Mike Alden. I hope you're enjoying the Alden Report as much as I am. I love bringing to you new and exciting people that add value to your life. I'm also super excited to announce my latest book, Bestseller Secrets. Listen, if you're an author, maybe you're thinking about writing a book, maybe you've already written a book, maybe you're an entrepreneur and you want to continue to grow your brand, maybe you're an entrepreneur and you want to bring in more leads, maybe you're a stay-at-home mom and you wrote a cookbook or a children's book, maybe you wrote a fantasy book, a self-help book, a tell-all book, a novel. It doesn't really matter. In my latest book, Bestseller Secrets, I give you all the information that I've literally spent millions of dollars trying to figure this thing out, and I'm going to give it to you absolutely free with my book, Bestseller Secrets. Go to bestsellersecretsbook.com. Again, it's bestsellersecretsbook.com. I give you all the information that I've spent literally millions of dollars trying to figure this whole world out. My books have gone on to do amazing things. I'm a 3-time Wall Street Journal, USA Today bestselling author. I've hit #1 on Amazon hundreds of times. My books have been the #1 book in the world against all books in every category. And I've also done this for other authors. And I'm giving you this information absolutely free. Just go to bestsellersecretsbook.com. You got to pay a small processing fee, but it doesn't really matter, again, because I've spent millions of dollars. And here's the other secret. You can do all this stuff yourself. If you don't have a team, that's okay. If you don't have a lot of time, that's okay. You read the information in my book, again, whether you just started writing a book, whether you've written the book, whether you wrote the book years ago, and you want to kind of resurrect it. In my book, Bestseller Secrets, I show you exactly what you need to do, and I'm giving you the book absolutely free. Go to bestsellersecretsbook.com, download the book, take that information, use it to become a bona fide, legitimate #1 bestseller. I show you how to become a #1 bestseller in less than 24 hours. And again, I'm giving you this information for free. Go to bestsellersecretsbook.com. Again, it's bestsellersecretsbook.com.
This is the Alden Report.
All right. Well, my name is Michael Alden. We are here in Blue Bay Studios. I say this every time, how excited I am to do this podcast. And I just, I don't think I'm ever going to not say this because I just love, interviewing and speaking with, interesting and innovative people. And my next guest is exactly one of those people. He is an international best-selling author. He's built businesses. He's, some of the biggest people, I guess, I use the term people in the world, come to him for advice. He's an innovator, and he's got another book out. He's one of the few people that have been on the podcast before. He wrote a great book before. We'll talk a little bit about that. We met actually at a speaking event years ago, and I love his book. I love what he has to offer. And the other part, like I said before, the people that come on the podcast, he's as real as it gets. So please help me welcome Mr. Jay Samit. Jay, thanks so much for being my guest again.
Thanks for having me back, Mike.
So you wrote this. The first book that you wrote is called Disrupt You, and it's just such an amazing book, especially now. I think even more timely with what's going on in the world. How just with COVID, the businesses have been decimated, but other businesses are thriving, and innovation is just a part of the everyday vernacular. But before we get into your latest book, tell us a little bit about yourself. I didn't want to take your thunder away a little bit. I'd like to, for our viewers and listeners who haven't maybe heard you the first time you on, tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got to today.
I'm a serial entrepreneur. I started my first company right out of college. Short version, you use my apps or interact with stuff that I've created every day. I did the first auction online that became something known as eBay. I worked with Reid Hoffman and launched LinkedIn. I've created the reason why we have video on a computer. It's funny, I had a company, Uvu, 10 years ago that did group video chat, what Zoom does today. I've done ad formats. I sold an ad startup to News Corp for $200 million. And then I've been an intrepreneur. When nobody ever calls me when they're having their best year. Just once, I'd like someone to go, Jay, we're having a great year. Could you make it better? Companies call me when they're in trouble. So what basically happened is I've run large entertainment companies, movie studios, and I recently stepped down as vice chairman of Deloitte. So I've sat in an empty room and started a company and made it all the way up to, running companies that do $44 billion a year.
When I hear that, from you, I'm looking at your, profile. Obviously, I know a little bit about you. We've, like I said, we met before at a speaking engagement years ago, and I was just really blown away by what you had to offer. But how do you get involved with the likes of Bill Clinton, the Pope, Steven Spielberg, Steve Jobs? Like, how does that happen? Is it just through being around the right circles, or like, tell us a little bit of, I'm just curious how
Sure.
you get in the room, with people like that.
So it all starts with the basic premise of, I hate competition. There's always somebody smarter than me, better looking than me, better financed, that knows more people. I mean, I hate that. Yet I'm very competitive. So I figured out at the beginning of my career that if you're doing something no one else in the world is doing, by definition, you're the best at the world at it, and opportunity just comes to you. So in the early days of video games, when I was making video games, at one point I had 7 of the top 10 best-selling video games in the world. Back then, video games were beep, 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 beep. That's the soundtrack. I said, what if we put real rock and roll into it? I mean, this would be just crazy. And I was making a PC game, and I said, you know what? This would sell a lot of PCs. This would get people hooked. So I wrote coldly to Bill Gates, the richest man in the world, and said, hey, I've got this great idea. I want to do this thing. You don't know me. I was a 6-person company. Nobody ever heard him. But could you write? I'm not asking him to do something. I'm asking him to do a favor. Would you, the richest man in the world and the stranger, send an email to David Geffen, the richest man in the history of the music industry, the guy that had the Eagles and Linda Ronstadt and Yoko and John.
All right, let me just stop you there. Let me stop you there for a second. What year was that?
This was 94.
Okay, so you're telling me that you sent a cold email to Bill Gates?
Correct.
Okay, because we know that wouldn't work now this day and age. But so you send a cold email to Bill Gates. He doesn't know you.
Doesn't know me. No.
And you just straight up ask him for a favor.
Correct.
Okay,
but as a favor that would help his business. But let me give you the example of how to do that today.
Right.
Because I don't want to be the old guy giving examples in World War II. You could have done this. In Disrupt You, I tell great stories, a similar thing. Young man gets a job out of college at one of the big ad agencies. He wants to be madman. He wants to be creative. He wants to do all this great stuff. And he's sitting in some cube, typing up numbers. And he's going to be in that cubicle for the next 15 years. And he wants to shoot himself. Nothing creative about the job. So he's Googling around, and he realizes that the big famous creative directors of Omnicom and the other big 3 giant agencies, none of those creative directors, no one's bought their name as a keyword on Google. So for $9, the price of a, Frappuccino, whenever these guys search their own names, what came up was, hey, I'd really like to work for you, click here and look at my portfolio. 3 of the top 5 most famous creative directors in the world called him in for job interviews. He made 5 times his salary and probably accelerated his career by 20 years for $9. So the opportunities are already there. We're 1 click away from 7 billion people. One of the things I didn't cover in Disrupt You that I realize is so key, and I get asked 1 million times, and I covered in Future Proofing You, is will you be my mentor? Will you be my mentor? I wish I could mentor everybody, which is why I write these books and spend time doing this, because I can't clone myself. I'm not trying to sell anything, but I teach people how to get a series of mentors, how to get the right mentors for each stage of your career. Yes, you, Mike, are very accomplished. Do I think Bill Gates today would, answer an email like I had the luck then? No, but there are people that would mentor you to the next level because they want to give back. They want to have validation for what they've learned. They want to share. And it's really easy by looking through profiles to understand which kind of people are open to doing that.
It's really interesting too what you said. When you think about where we're at today. I mean, obviously, we're in the midst of this pandemic, and just a lot of difficult things going on. And your book, again, your latest book that's coming out in March, I believe, and depending on when you're listening to this, maybe listen to it after the fact. It's called Future Proofing You. You can actually find it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It's available everywhere, and it's published by my publisher as well, Wiley and Sons, which is great. But when you think about the world today and the despair that people are in fact going through and the difficult times that they're going through, and it's really powerful what you said, you're 1 click away. Like
Yeah.
expand on that a little bit about
Sure.
the opportunities that are really there for people, because I think a lot of people, again, I don't want to turn this into a monologue, but I think a lot of people who are in fact in a difficult spot financially, emotionally, physically, all this stuff is going on. And then someone like you is going to say, hey, you're just one click away. Let's expand on that a little bit
So
and on the opportunity.
let me speak some truths. And this book is down to 12 truths for success. I tried to make it real simple. Right now, 140 million people in the US are at the poverty line. We don't talk about that. The bottom 140 million people own 1% of what there is. So if you're feeling left out or left behind and you think your life is just leftovers, first of all, that's not true. Second of all, it's not your fault. Okay? We have an academic system that was set up to make you to be a factory worker, but we don't have factory workers. Today, we produce twice as much in US factories as we did in 1984 with 1/3 the employees. Foxconn, who makes your iPhone, I sit on the board with them. They now have 11 lights out factories. What's a lights out factory? The lights are out in the building because there's not a single human in the factory. So the world is fundamentally changing. And 5 years ago, when I was on your show and I was telling people, your job will get disrupted, I don't have to make that case anymore. We all got hit by it. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to make this within reach of everybody and not be some full of it, huckster out there. Again, I'm not selling masterminds or any of these other things. I'm just trying to tell truth and help people. And so I got an email. I get lots of emails. My book's in 10 languages, changes people's lives all over the world. It just blows my mind. It's the most gratifying experience of my life. But I got an email from a millennial that said, your book was all motivational, but I could never do that. And it turns out Jay Samit has really thin skin. That aided me. So I decided to put my reputation on the line. I decided I was going to find somebody who grew up on welfare, his parents were on welfare, who was homeless, and mentor him 1 day a week for a year. The rules of the experiment were I would give him no capital, I would introduce him to no contacts, and I wouldn't tell him what business to start. It had to be something he could start without any money. And he went from that to self-made millionaire, and I'll wreck the ending of the book, in 11 months. And so I show you the step-by-step, and I teach how to build a high-tech startup at the largest engineering university. One semester, I had 2 students that did 150 million their first year. It's tough to tell the head of the university that you're talking kids into quitting. But when you explain that they'll probably donate a lot of money to the university, you get over it. So Vin Clancy was willing to work harder than most people would, so he can now live the rest of his life in a manner most people can't. And so it is achievable. And this is not going to be the only pandemic. This is going to happen again and again. We have so many problems. And yet, if you have a growth mindset, there's always opportunity. Here's where it starts, where people get wrong. Mike, let's go back. We're in 3rd grade. Math teachers teaching you, teachers teaching you. If you buy an apple for $1 and you sell it for $2, that's how you make $1. So in game theory, that's called zero-sum game. The only way Mike makes money is if he gets Jay's dollar. When you have that mindset, then you're like, wait a second, we're all competing for this fixed amount of dollars. If I don't get it, you get it, or immigrants get it, or foreigners get it, or everybody's taking my jobs. And you have this negative cloud. Now let me give you J math. Mike, I'm starting a new company. I'll sell you 10% for $10,000. You give me $10,000. What do I now have? I now have $100,000, 10 in cash and 90 in stock. I can use that stock to buy things, do things. This is how Jeff Bezos lost money for 10 years and came out the other side as the richest man in the world. He lost money year after year. So money isn't created by governments. It doesn't come from the Federal Reserve. It's created out of thin air by entrepreneurs. And every 48 hours, there's a new self-made billionaire. Let that sink in. I mean, I feel like a slacker. What do you do the last 2 days? Anyway, so why are people able to do it? Warren Buffett he's worth $80+ billion, made 99% of that after he was 50. That's great. Kylie Jenner became a billionaire by 22. I'd rather have money when I'm young then wait till I'm old and, get better brand of applesauce. I mean, so what is it that she did? Well, you say, oh, her family was famous, this or that. Yeah, there weren't any billionaires. What she did is, instead of selling her name to some cosmetic company to put a name on something, why not just monetize her fans directly, cut out the middleman? So part of the thing that people don't understand is value creation and value capture. And so I broke it down in Future Proofing You, 12 truths. That's it. If you follow these 12 truths, you will have success. It won't be easy. Ben Clancy, the young man, didn't get to date for a year, watch TV. I mean, he didn't own a car, so he was kind of stuck in Los Angeles. And he was exhausted. And one of the funniest parts of the book, or most interesting to me, is 6 months into it. So his first month, he made $70,000. Okay. He was so thrilled. He could have flown across the US without a plane. I mean, he was on fire. He was like, how can this be possible? But 6 months in, he hands me a note. And it's a note that he wrote the first day that we met. And it basically said, this old guy's full of it. This isn't going to work. He doesn't know anything, but I got nothing else going on, so I'll just play along. He didn't even believe he could do it. And I'm here to tell you, the only people that create jobs are entrepreneurs. The middle class has been eviscerated. I won't get into tax policy and all that. But if you want a democracy, if you want a free country, you need a strong middle class. So it is so full of opportunity. And I have one whole chapter on $1 trillion opportunity that's open to every single person that nobody's got a head start on right now.
In a second, I want to talk to you a little bit about, kind of what you just said, $1 trillion opportunity, and just how big that number is, and just how overwhelming that might be for some people to even understand. And I want you to maybe kind of tell us about how you can change your mindset. Again, we're on with Jay Samit. He's an international best-selling author. He's an advisor to Fortune 500 companies. He's an advisor to some of the wealthiest people in the world, some of the most famous people in the world. And he's been doing some pretty amazing things. He wrote his first book called Disrupt You. He was on the podcast years ago. We met, like I said earlier, at a speaking engagement, and I was just blown away about what he had to say. If you'd like some more information about Jay or his book, you can just go to jaysamit.com. It's JAYSAMIT.com. You can find him on Instagram at Jay Samit. And you can also find his book, Future Proofing You, 12 Truths for Creating Opportunity, Maximizing Wealth, and Controlling Your Destiny in an Uncertain World. So the $1 trillion number you talk about, you say that it's available to everybody. Okay. By the way, I love the premise of this book. Again, for those who are listening or watching right now, if you really kind of understand what he said, he took somebody who was at the poverty level, who had nothing, who didn't have money, who didn't have contacts. Jay didn't give him any of that stuff. And he showed this young man on what to do and how to do it. And again, the guy became a self-made millionaire in under a year, which is, it just seems so unbelievable. Again, if you're in despair, if you're struggling, then you just said something. You talk about this industry that's available to anybody, $1 trillion industry. I want to hear about what that industry is, but before we even get into that, how does someone shift their mindset? Someone who is in that really difficult. And I'm sure, and I know you talk about it a little bit with the 12 truths, but what's one thing that someone should say? Like, look, I was on welfare. I grew up on WIC. The Salvation Army used to come to my house on Thanksgiving, Christmas, and every other holiday. I was the kid that stood in the separate line in elementary school, middle school, and high school because my lunch was subsidized by the state. I'm one of the few kids that actually made it out without being in jail or addicted to drugs. So I know what that's like. Yeah. So those that are going through that right now, and they hear $1 trillion idea, or they hear this story and they say, that's not me. Like, I can't do that. Tell us how they can.
So let's break that down. If you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So it's really about that voice inside you. And the first book, Disrupt You, was about teaching people. Everybody thinks of changing the world, but nobody thinks of changing themselves. So what happened is, most likely your parents, your teachers, and others gave up on their dreams. And they're trying to shield you from the pain. So they tell you, you can't do this, you can't do that. and you start internalizing those beliefs. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, you're going to get a lot of people saying no to you, a lot of rejection. But when somebody says no, they're not saying no, you can't do it. They're saying no, you can't do it with them. It's their loss, not yours. And so you're going to go through a series of failing. Failing is good. Everybody think of playing a video game for a second. You don't sit down and then go all the way through and make it to the end level. You go a little bit, you die, you go a little bit, die. Each time you come up with a new obstacle and then you figure out how to get over it and past it. That's all that entrepreneurship is. Everybody that you think of as these famous people failed. Walt Disney's first company, bankrupt. Henry Ford's bankrupt. I'll tell you my favorite one. There were two guys that were ahead of their time. Two guys straight out of high school that had this great idea. This is back in the 1970s. What if we hook up computers to traffic lights to reduce traffic? It was called trafo data. Obviously, this is how the world works now. They went to city planners. Everybody said this is the dumbest idea. So Bill Gates and Paul Allen's first company went bankrupt. Okay? But they didn't stop. So here's what happens when you fail.
Hold on a second. Let me stop you there real quick. So
Sure.
you're saying that was Bill Gates and Paul Allen?
Yeah.
That was their first business.
Yep. Trafo data.
I don't. You know what? I had no idea. I'd never heard that story before. By the way, you just skimmed over it real quick, and I think it's pretty powerful to hear that. I know that Bill Gates was, when he was younger, he was, writing code for banks. I knew that was kind of a big thing for him, but I had no idea that was the case. And so that was their first business together.
That was the first business, and hey, I mean, I've had businesses that my time has been wrong too. I mean, everybody has. But when you fail, you don't end up where you started. You either earn or you learn. And so just like the video game metaphor, you keep on learning, okay? Most investors would rather invest in somebody who's had a business that already failed because you learn stuff on somebody else's dime. So it's not a straight path. And Vin Clancy, the young man that I mentored, he was suddenly gone like a rocket ship. He was really doing amazing. And then the two biggest companies in the world, Facebook and Google, shut down his business. He did nothing wrong. He wasn't doing anything wrong. And the algorithms changed and all that. And all of a sudden, like, what do? Well, you learn what else will work. And so that's what really happens. And so many businesses pivot. So they change. Businesses you use every day weren't set up to do that. Twitter was a music company. If you like the Bill Gates story, this is my other favorite one. Before you could swipe left or right to go out on a date, there was online dating. And it used to be still pictures and bios, and people hooked up the same way. And three guys sat down and said, we got a great idea. We want to make it with videos. We want to put videos so you can see the person's personality, hear their voice. It was called Tune In, Hook Up. Guaranteed successful idea. They built this great site. They did everything, and no one wanted to date the losers on Tune In, Hook Up. But they looked at the data before they pulled the plug. And they noticed something that they didn't have in their business plan. Nobody wanted to date these losers. The first video was a guy standing in front of an elephant at the zoo about why you should go out with them on a date. So sexy. But they noticed that people wanted to share those videos with their friends to show how bad the dating site was. So they changed the name of Tune In, Hook Up to YouTube and became billionaires without a penny in revenue. I could do a day. I could go on and on and on. The point is, you have to get in the game. You have to try, and you'll learn stuff. Now, can I shorten your journey? There's only two things you're going to need: insight and perseverance. I can show you how to shore up your perseverance, and I can teach you how to get the insight to have the money-making ideas. Everything else can be hired.
This is why I love you so much, man. And you're in your first book too. You tell a lot of these stories, but to hear these stories, I think for me it's inspiring. I think for those, again, as an entrepreneur myself, who is I've been beat up and lost over and over and over again. I wrote an article for a magazine here called Boston Man Magazine, and the title of it was "I'm a Great Loser." And my mom was like, "Mike, why are you saying that? You're not a loser." I said, "No, it's just kind of the way it is." But you also touched upon something earlier too. You talked about pain, and you talked about how parents and teachers, and I don't think coaches really do, but parents and teachers try to shield, adolescent children from pain because they don't want them to feel that same pain. Is pain necessary? Is it a necessary part of the entrepreneurial journey?
Well, let's go back to evolution. So we started as little lizards, and the center of our cortex, cerebral cortex, is the lizard brain. Okay, it's that fight or flight response. The 4 Fs. You're going to either fight it, flee it, feed from it, or F it. So you can't get away from those. And one of the chapters in Future Proofing You is all about fear, because most people don't understand fear is the greatest asset you have. Okay. Fear isn't this weakness to overcome. Anybody that tells you can get rid of fear is full of it, because your fear response happens before any of the reasoning and higher levels of the more advanced parts of your brain. So you're going to be afraid. So you don't want to give up your job because you're afraid, you're losing your job. You're afraid you're going to go broke. You're afraid. The only reason you're on this planet is because 1,000 generations before, Ugg in the cave, he was afraid of saber-toothed tigers and he ran. Okay. Everybody's been afraid. That's how you survive. So how do you overcome that? You don't. But you look at what should you fear more? Losing your job? Well, you have a job at a company that might go out of business. Look what happened this year with the pandemic. The majority of Fortune 500 companies went out of business. Half of all jobs will disappear this decade. Worse than that, you're trading a day of your life for a job that you hate. You go, it's a day. Well, that turns into a week, a year, a lifetime. You gave away your whole life. You wasted your life for what? So fear of wasting your life, fear of regret, that should be motivating you. Talk to your grandparents. Go to an old age home and ask people what they regret in their lives. And not one of them will tell you a mistake. It'll be something they didn't try. So you shift your fear. But here's the other part that people don't explain of fear. Everyone you will meet in business also has fears. So if you can learn how to leverage the 3 most important fears in business, now you can convert that sale. You can get that investor. You can get that person to come work for you. So fear is a tool. And I don't mean mafia style fear. I mean FOMO. One of the biggest financial payouts of my day, $200 million payout, came from fear of missing out. I leveraged that. So there's almost anything that you can really, make happen. And so we are human. We will have fears, but prioritize your fear.
So fear isn't false evidence appearing as real?
No, fear is hardwired.
Yeah, when I think about fear too, and Zig Ziglar kind of taught me that false evidence appearing as real. But I also believe in everything you're saying. That I was telling someone recently, like I have a fear of being poor again, right? And it's like it's one of the things that drives me. Like I just never want to go through that again. And for me, it seems to drive me. It seems to like it works for me.
I'm the same way. I was a young dad, and I looked down at my 2 young sons, and I wanted them to have a better life. I was not going to give up. I had no choice. I wanted to make it better. And it was interesting when my sons were grown and successful, I kind of lost my motivation. I was bored running, companies that do, tens of billions of dollars a year. It was just, why do that? And when I wrote that first book, and I got suddenly, instead of being a CEO of a NASDAQ company and getting hate emails all day, you got love letters of how people's lives were changed. I suddenly had a new purpose. So turning perseverance into purpose and passion, that will drive you. And that is the difference. I mean, a great example is you walk by a construction site and there's 3 guys, laying bricks. And you ask them, what's your job? And the first guy says, I'm a bricklayer. And the second guy says, I'm building a building. And the third guy says, I'm making a house for God. Okay, they were building a church. The first guy has a job. The second guy has a career. The third guy has a calling. So if you look at those people that overcome and find that internal strength, there's usually a calling. And here's the proof of it. Anybody that came from another country and started here with nothing, immigrants, they have a higher calling for wanting this better life, this whatever. So they may be working in a menial job or something that looks like a basic job, but that's a stepping stone for their path. And that's why 1/3 of Fortune 500 companies were founded by an immigrant or the child of an immigrant. They're on a road to achieve something, but we all can find that passion. My buddy Tom Bilyeu was running a software company, was doing fine. He was bored, but his family, his mother, everybody were morbidly obese. They couldn't get them to eat healthy. So in a world that already had 1,600 protein bars, which are really candy bars filled with corn syrup, he wanted to make a healthy one, Quest Nutrition, and they sold the thing for like $900 million. It's that passion, and you can develop that passion. And I teach you tricks for developing that passion. You already have it in you. You're just not focused.
I love it, man. In a second, I want to talk to you about how you build a virtual company. That's something right now. I'm actually learning a little bit about that, myself, as my company actually pivots, and maybe we'll get into that. I don't know. But hey, again, that's the next thing I want to talk to you about, and just kind of we'll pivot the conversation a little bit, because I think it's timely as well. Again, we're on with Jay Samit. He is a international best-selling author. His books have been translated in, I think, over 10 different languages, sold all over the world. He's a internationally recognized speaker, sought after speaker. He's an advisor to presidents. He's been an advisor to the Pope, to Fortune 500, Fortune 50 companies, and he's also an innovator, and he's the go-to guy when you're looking at trends, when you're looking at what's going on in the world. This is the guy. I'm super happy to have him back on. He's got a new book coming out. It's called Future Proofing You: 12 Truths for Creating Opportunity, Maximizing Wealth, and Controlling Your Destiny in an Uncertain World. You can also just find him at jaysamit.com. It's JAYSAMIT.com. Find him on Instagram at jaysamit. And his book is available everywhere for pre-order right now. So definitely want to pick it up. His first book is amazing. And as I'm sitting here listening to him, I just can't wait to read it myself, because I was that kid. Like I said, I want to get those nuggets right now. We're getting some of them now, which is just awesome. So again, thanks for spending some time with us, Jay. So, this virtual company now, and before I want to tee it up a little bit. I've had some young entrepreneurs on my podcast, and I sit there and I'm looking at them like I'm looking at you, or I'll talk to them, and it blows my mind when I think about what they've done with such a small group of people with relatively no working capital. And I built fairly big businesses, but it's been like, it's always a struggle, but the struggle is just, it's capital intensive. It's human intensive. You need physical bodies. And now the way the world is shifting, these virtual businesses are in fact massive businesses, but with a small group of people. Tell us about how someone can build this type of business with, again, relatively no capital. And what about the people who aren't tech savvy? Like if they look at these companies and they say, man, I don't know how to do any of that stuff. Let's talk a little bit about these virtual companies and how one can go about doing it.
Well, I'll answer your second one first, because there's a whole chapter called Everything is a Tech Startup. Okay. You are in a tech business, no matter what it is. If you're opening a restaurant, that's a tech business. If you're opening anything, it's a tech business. And to answer your fear, if you're not technical, you can hire technical people. Steve Jobs wrote as much code as everybody here, and he built a $1 trillion tech business called Apple. He never wrote a line of code, couldn't read code, wasn't an engineer, didn't graduate college. So understand that when you look for information, you're looking on your phone, when you're running your life, when you wake up in the morning, when you go to bed, everything is about being connected in technology. You don't have to know how to repair a transmission to know how to drive a car. You don't have to know how to program a computer to have a virtual business. So what the pandemic finally proved, if companies like Nationwide Insurance can shift to 98% of their people at home, okay, in 30 days, anyone can have a virtual company. Now, I didn't know it was called a virtual company when I founded my first undercapitalized business in my 20s. What I did know is I told my little boys, when the phone rings, we're going to play a game of who can stay quiet the longest, because daddy has to make it sound like I'm at an office. And the kids knew I was serious, and they went along with that. But today, you have a huge advantage. Because of the pandemic, so many free software tools have come out for running teams virtually, for running any type of business virtually. And I have a chapter that lists 22 of the most useful ones that are out there that are free. But here's the advantage. It used to be, if you were starting a business, you could only hire the best people that lived within 10 miles of you. Well, I don't care where you live. You don't have the exclusivity on the best people in the world. Now you can not only hire the best people that live anywhere in the world, but people in other markets don't want to necessarily command US salaries. So a great example of this was 99 Designs. For those not familiar, it was a company where you can get your logo or your book cover or anything. You put up a prize for $100. I want a logo that says a tree that looks like the letter J. And anybody that wants $100 will put up a thing and you'll click on one, you'll own it, and they get the money. Put up $1,000 reward, and you get the best designers and graphic artists that actually have full-time jobs at ad agencies that want to make a little moonlighting money. And every time I've done this, I always ask at the end where the person's from. And they're from all over the world. They could be college kids. It doesn't make a difference. Good design is good design. So you can now hire this great talent when you need them for as long as you need them. Not like a big company that has to pay people to sit around and do nothing, or pay for a big office, or pay for all that overhead. And you can pivot that much quicker. Tomorrow you need this type of engineer, use them for that amount of time. But you can really just focus on what do you need to create revenue and what do you need to capture that value. And that's it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I started to learn about VAs, virtual assistants, right? And I've heard all about them before, but I never even considered it. And then when I think about like you said with 99 Designs or companies like Upwork or Fiverr,
Right.
and all these different companies that are out there, it is amazing what you can get. And like you said, all over the world, and people live in different socioeconomic, areas of the world. So, $100 to someone in Pakistan is like worth like $10,000 to someone here in the States. I don't know if those are exact numbers, but but
but it's spot on. I mean, when I've run multinational companies, I've moved engineering groups to Poland or to Eastern Europe or wherever. Excellent engineers. They learn from the same books. They learn from the same knowledge, but they can live for less. The flip side is you no longer have to live in a first world country or a major city with outrageous rent. I mean, I can't tell you, if you would see in Silicon Valley, there's a street in Silicon Valley just lined with broken down motorhomes. Okay. It looks like a homeless camp. Those are all engineers that are making six figures, but can't afford to live in apartments or houses because the cost is astronomical. But now you can live anywhere. One of the upsides is you see millennials are now doing their job remotely and traveling. They don't have to wait till they're 60 to go on some old fogey trip. They can enjoy life and have a work-life balance. Workers that work from home, 40% more productive, less turnover, and most, according to a survey that I have in my book, will take up to a 15% pay cut to have that freedom. And when you think about talented workers that may have a young child or may have an elderly parent or somebody with special needs that they have to take care of, they're so grateful and thankful that they have an employer that allows them to have that balance, that they really put everything into it. Why wouldn't you take advantage of these tools?
Yeah, I mean, the tools are there. I know we touched upon it a little bit earlier. I know you don't probably have a lot more time, but before I do let you go, I want to talk about mentors.
Yes.
I as an attorney, I remember when I graduated law school and then I passed the bar exam, and I said to myself, because of the way I grew up, I'm like, man, I don't know any lawyers. I don't know anybody in this space. And I happened to just meet the first lawyer that I met. I just came right out and told him, I just said, you're going to be my mentor. And we've really become, I go, you're the only one I know. I said, so I need help, man. Like, law school didn't necessarily teach you how to file briefs and all these other things. I mean, we go through mock trials and all that stuff, but mentors, for me, have really been instrumental in me learning and also making mistakes too, because I've had a lot of mentors tell me to do something based off of their experience, and I go the opposite direction, and I would say every single time they were right. So let's talk about the importance of a mentor and how does someone go about getting one?
So the biggest oversight in the first book was I didn't talk about this. So of my 12 truths, number 7 is don't fly solo. I used to run record companies. Our labels had the Beatles and the Stones and everybody that you could possibly think of. And part of the mythology of the record business was make it feel like that one artist on that stage had that connection with you, and it's one-to-one, and they're self-made and they did it on their own. And I remember standing in Wembley Stadium with 100,000 fans screaming, and our artist is on the stage. And what they don't see is the songwriters and the producers and the backup musicians and the hairstylists and the makeup and the managers and the roadies and the tour and the scores of people that it takes to make it look like the self-made person. There are no self-made people. You weren't born here. The only reason Newton achieved what he did in his life was he stood on the shoulders of the scientists before him. That's his own quote. So you're going to need not one mentor, but a series of mentors for different stages of your career. And yeah, you don't go online and go, will you be my mentor? The best mentors, you never use the M word. So I teach people how to look on LinkedIn to see the type of people that would be good mentors for them, how to identify them and how to get them to do, and how to make the relationship work for both. And it is so important. I mean, Mother Teresa wouldn't have become Mother Teresa without a mentor. She met on a bus stop of all places. I have a great story about Dwayne Johnson and the role the mentor played in his life, from basically being a punk, out of control punk, to the highest paid movie star in the history of Hollywood. And so it's really key to be open and realize that you need that. And you'd be amazed how many people are willing, because it validates them. It lets them share what they've learned and pass it forward. The most rewarding thing in my life has not been making money. Money is a tool. The most rewarding thing was when I started to pay it forward and see the impact I could have on people's lives. I loved it. Now, I get thousands of people that ask me, will you be my mentor? That's why I wrote the books, because I don't have the time to be a mentor to everybody. But I specifically chose this one young man, and I tried to pick somebody that was below or at the bottom of where anybody starts. So that virtually anybody hearing and reading his story will say, I have more advantages than that person, knowing that they can do it. And it's so interesting when I start looking around at the impact the mentors have had and how to maintain it. And by the way, when you start your company, part of your role is also to mentor those within your company. And companies that have mentorship programs actually retain people longer, and those participants end up making more money, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, you hit on a real key one, Mike.
Yeah, again, mentors, again, have been really important for me. And, the thing too, I think that about mentors, I think a lot of people think because you have like masterminds and all these other coaches that are, their whole business is just charging people, for their services. And quite frankly, most of them have no idea what the hell they're talking about.
If somebody's charging you, it's not a mentor. By the way, SCORE is an organization that mentors over 100,000 young entrepreneurs in this country each year. I list all the different mentor organizations that you can join depending where you are. Young presidents, entrepreneur organization, all these are great things. I went to an EO event I spoke at in Portugal. 1,000 people flew in from all over the world to mentor each other. Nobody was getting paid. It's a beautiful experience. So yeah, that's one of the things that people have to realize. The other thing is, you have to fill a void. Like I said about competition, if there's something that's not being addressed, if there's an unmet need, if there's an unsolved problem, and somebody else invented technology that you can now use to solve it, how easy is that? Then there's going to be a million people that are going to come in and compete with you once you show the world, oops, I solved this. But that's a whole different problem. But look for a void to fill.
Yeah, the other thing too is that and you just mentioned, organizations, like you said, a lot of them are free to join, where you can just meet these people and network. And despite what's going on within the world, and as far as the pandemic is concerned, you can still connect with these people and reach out to them, and it doesn't really cost.
I'll give you an even better idea. If you're in a town that doesn't have a bunch of startup meetups, start one. Then you're in the center. I had a wonderful guy, Harrison Painter, who worked for me in Los Angeles. Wonderful attitude and everything, but he got tired of LA and all the noise and traffic. And he grew up in Indiana, and he went back to Indianapolis, and there wasn't that startup vibe there. So he started one, and it's now become the centerpiece of the entire community.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it's as you said that too, with my podcast itself too. We were talking earlier before we were recording. For me, it's been very rewarding to sit down and essentially be mentored by you. I've had some of the biggest names in the world on this podcast, and people that are playing, they're at different levels. And for me, as an entrepreneur, it's enlightening, it's inspiring, and so like I say to people who are listening or watching, start a podcast. There's so many of them out there. Start a podcast and start reaching out to people, because you can add value to people as well, right?
And I owe huge thanks to my mentor was Richard Branson's original partner in starting Virgin, a guy named Ken Berry. And Ken was my boss at one point in my career, and he was CEO of the company, and I'd go in with a wacky idea, and he didn't shoot it down. He explained to me what I didn't know. So then I could go back and make the wacky idea a little bit better and a little bit better. And, that's how I got on this whole path of starting all these crazy things that haven't been done before. It wasn't that somebody said, no, that's stupid. They said, here's why it won't work. So a mentor isn't there to give you empty praise. More entrepreneurs have been ruined by praise, when in fact, what you should seek is criticism, critique. Don't ask grandma if your business is a good idea. Go ask 10 customers, okay? They don't have a lot of time to waste. They'll tell you why they don't like it. I'm chairman of a new robotics company that's solving a huge problem in the world. How do you take pesticides and herbicides out of our food, right? Well, it was a real simple idea. Why do we put poison? Who thought it was a good idea to grow poison? Let's put to grow food. Let's put a bunch of poison to kill the weeds, just enough not to kill that or us. Yeah, it doesn't work out that way, as we learned with Roundup and dicamba and all that. So what if I just had little robots the size of an ice chest that go around and eat the weeds and not the plants? Then you're not eating poison, but then you don't have to till the soil anymore to kill the weeds, which means you sequester carbon. 10% of all the greenhouse gases will stop just from that one thing. Then we take poison out of the food. Then the poison doesn't run down the Mississippi and kill all the fish in the Gulf. Then we don't get cancers. All this out of solving one problem. So I didn't want to run another company, but when the CEO of Greenfield Robotics said, here's what problems we want to solve, I felt morally obligated to jump in and help again. So how do you help people at scale is what I'm trying to do at this stage of my life.
I love it. Before I let you go, I wanted to ask you, as an author, international best-selling author, books sold all over the world, and as an author myself, I'm actually helping authors now, and we have a lot of entrepreneurs that listen to this, and a lot of people that have maybe written a book or thinking about writing a book. What are you doing? And I'm really interested in to hear what you're saying as far as what you're doing for your book. I know that with Disrupt You, you got your book into things like Mentor Box. What are you doing now, other than coming on podcasts like this to market your book? You have about a month and a half or so before your publication date. What are some of the things, innovative things that you're doing to promote and market your book? Just curious.
So what has developed since in the past 5 years is what you do, Mike, is front and center of the best way to reach people. Mm-hmm. So there are many podcasts with very unique niche audiences. And since I've worked in almost every industry you can think of, when I was vice chairman of Deloitte, Deloitte is everywhere. I can tailor the message to those specific things. I've done the usual, using social media to get the word out, and with large corporations, instead of paying me $40,000 to come and speak at one of their lunches, why don't you offer to buy books for all your employees and I'll come speak for free.
Right.
And I'm doing that all over the place. I will tell you, with my first book, one of the most interesting things that happened is a teacher emailed me with Disrupt You and said, similar to your story, Mike, says, I teach in an area where the kids either work at Mickey D's or go to prison. Those are the two options. Your book could show them a third, but it's not written for high school kids. So I said, I give you free permission to go and do a student version, a student guide. She did that. She became Teacher of the Year, and she did such a good job. I went out and used my Rolodex. I went to HP and said, guys, I want you to print these things and donate them to all the boys and girls clubs. All right. Get it out there at scale. So there's always a way to connect. The other thing, if you have a message for a specific audience, find somebody else that wants to reach that audience, what I call OPM, other people's money, and say, wow, wouldn't this be a great, your book, whatever it is, wouldn't this be a great giveaway to give, people when you're, instead of a t-shirt or whatever you're giving at your next event? And I go, yeah, you do that. And you go, yeah. And then your book gets out to thousands and thousands.
I like it. So it's thinking outside the box, and it's exactly the type of person you are. But also it's simple too. Like, what you just said, you just need to think about it if you really, really want to do it with your book. So thanks for sharing that little tidbit with us. I also want to thank you again just for coming on and sharing your knowledge, your wisdom. I could probably talk to you for the next couple hours and just keep picking your brain on some things, but I know you have other things to do. So again, we've been on with Jay Samit. He is an international best-selling author. He's a highly acclaimed international speaker. He speaks all over the world. He's also a sought-after individual for companies and individuals that are innovating, and they're looking to innovate. And he's, like he said, he's been in pretty much every industry you can imagine. And he's been a part of some of the biggest things. And even like what we're doing right now, Jay has somehow touched it. And it's just really amazing that he's here today. He's got another book coming out. It's called Future Proofing You: 12 Truths for Creating Opportunity, Maximizing Wealth, and Controlling Your Destiny in an Uncertain World. It's available everywhere. You can obviously go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. Wiley & Sons is his publisher, which is also my publisher. So they're doing some great things over there. You can find them at just jaysamit.com, JAYSAMIT.com. And also on Instagram at Jay Samit. He's available everywhere. You just need to just Google the guy. He's been doing some great things for a long time, and he continues to. And I just want to thank you again for coming on and spending some time with us, Jay. My name is Michael Alden. That's Jay Samit, and we'll talk to you soon. Hey, it's Mike Alden. I hope you're enjoying the Alden Report as much as I am. I love bringing to you new and exciting people that add value to your life. I'm also super excited to announce my latest book, Bestseller Secrets. Listen, if you're an author, maybe you're thinking about writing a book, maybe you've already written a book, maybe you're an entrepreneur and you want to continue to grow your brand, maybe you're an entrepreneur and you want to bring in more leads, maybe you're a stay-at-home mom and you wrote a cookbook or a children's book, maybe you wrote a fantasy book, a self-help book, a tell-all book, a novel. It doesn't really matter. In my latest book, Bestseller Secrets, I give you all the information that I've literally spent millions of dollars trying to figure this thing out, and I'm going to give it to you absolutely free with my book, Bestseller Secrets. Go to bestsellersecretsbook.com. Again, it's bestsellersecretsbook.com. I give you all the information that I've spent literally millions of dollars trying to figure this whole world out. My books have gone on to do amazing things. I'm a 3-time Wall Street Journal, USA Today bestselling author. I've hit #1 on Amazon hundreds of times. My books have been the #1 book in the world against all books in every category. And I've also done this for other authors. And I'm giving you this information absolutely free. Just go to bestsellersecretsbook.com. You got to pay a small processing fee, but it doesn't really matter, again, because I've spent millions of dollars. And here's the other secret. You can do all this stuff yourself. If you don't have a team, that's okay. If you don't have a lot of time, that's okay. You read the information in my book, again, whether you just started writing a book, whether you've written the book, whether you wrote the book years ago, and you want to kind of resurrect it. In my book, Bestseller Secrets, I show you exactly what you need to do, and I'm giving you the book absolutely free. Go to bestsellersecretsbook.com, download the book, take that information, use it to become a bona fide, legitimate #1 bestseller. I show you how to become a #1 bestseller in less than 24 hours. And again, I'm giving you this information for free. Go to bestsellersecretsbook.com. Again, it's bestsellersecretsbook.com.